Yeah, let's start off with Peter. I'm sure all of you know who he is, but he was a decorated diplomat, a lot of military experience, and he's got a background in philosophy, politics, and economics. He has held a variety of international roles involving HSBC, Amareda, Regal Petroleum, Mortgage Capital, Brazilian Chamber of Commerce, etc. He was also the former High Commissioner in Sri Lanka and the Republic of Maldives, and is now the honorary president of the British Sri Lanka and Maldives Forum. Sir Peter, over to you.
Thank you very much. One small correction there. I wasn't a High Commissioner in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka came very early in my career, so early it wasn't called Sri Lanka, it was called Ceylon. And I was a first secretary in the High Commission then, just promoted first secretary, so a young first secretary.
My apologies.
And no apologies needed. I just don't want to got ahead of myself. Anyway, I will just talk a little about the Maldives then. And we're going back a long, long way because I'm very old. We go back to the 1960s. And I spent 3 years as a first secretary in the High Commission in Colombo. That was so long ago, the High Commission was in the fort. I think it's moved twice since then. Among my responsibilities were relations with the Maldives. And so I used to go quite often to the Maldives. And the thrust of what I have to say today, I think, is simply to outline a little what it was like then, from which you will see what remarkable, amazing progress the Maldives have made since then. And if they can make that degree of progress in one lifetime, then one has to assume that level of progress will continue well into the future. In those days, there was no tourism at all. There were no tourists. There were no regular flights into Mali or anywhere else. There were no tourists. One didn't see any tourists at all on my visits there, which were invariably to talk with members of the government. And the economy was based an economy which always struck me as worth a paragraph or two in economist textbooks, because the foreign earnings of the Maldives was almost exclusively the export of Maldive fish to dried fish, that was, to Sri Lanka. So it was a monopoly export, only one source, and a monopoly import by Sri Lanka, only one market. And so nonetheless, that made a reasonable living for the Maldives. Since then, of course, their economy has expanded in all sorts of areas, and we saw on the slide at the beginning the tall buildings in Mali, which didn't exist then, and so on. One or two little footnotes to things I was involved in at that time and what happened. One is when I arrived there, the Maldives were a British protectorate. They were never a British colony in the way Sri Lanka was, Ceylon was, but they were a British protectorate. And I'll come to a bit more on that in a moment. But we did have an aid program from London for the Maldives. And I do recall that the Maldive government wanted, under the aid program, the purchase and donation of a cargo ship so that they could involve the Maldives in trade in the area. And when I put that to London, that this seemed a worthy ambition and a good way of helping the Maldivian budget, they first turned it down and said, no, if we give the Maldives a cargo ship to operate in the Indian Ocean, it'll undercut in its tariffs the big British shipping companies, P&O and the like, in the region. So I wrote back and said, well, of course they would. If they charge more than big, well-established companies, they won't get any business at all. and London came back and said, "Okay, you win," and the Maldives got its cargo ship. I'm sure it's long since gone, but I've often wondered how long that lasted. Another thing that I was a bit involved in was that, as has already been touched on, the Maldives ceased to be a British protectorate while I was there, and I was there 1963 to 66, and had independence. And independence was not given as it was with most countries that Britain had either had as colonies or protectorates. It's a very low-key affair, and the chief British representative at the ceremony was Michael Walker, then British High Commissioner in Colombo. I was there, signed a document. I've got a picture of it, of the day, which I will hopefully show you in a second. It marked a very important day in the Maldives, and the anniversary of that day is still celebrated. Let me see if you can see that. Wait a minute. No, all I can see is the. Can you? No. It looks like you can't. Oh well. So involved in that very much, and then an issue came up at the time of Maldives becoming properly and fully independent nation, was membership of the United Nations. It had been an assumption, not often stated but implicit, at the time that as more and more countries around the world became independent from the European nations that had colonies and protectorates, that below a certain size, it didn't make much sense to be members of the UN. That the resources, the distance, and so on would make that membership difficult to manage. And the Maldives, it was thought in London, were below that line, wherever that line might be. And I took it upon myself to argue that, and first of all managed to convince the High Commissioner, who was my boss, that the Maldives should become a member of the UN. He was convinced. We then decided we'd see what the Americans thought about it, and we went to the American embassy and found, first of all, they all too accepted the conventional line that Maldives was too small to have UN membership. But in a couple of hours talking the issue over with him, with the American ambassador, we convinced him. Both set out to convince London and Washington. Both met initial hesitancy, to say the least, and both became convinced that wherever you drew that line, it would create more problems than it would solve, because there'd be countries just over it and just under it, and those just under wouldn't accept it, and so on. So the membership went through, and the Maldives became a full member of the UN, as it still is, with a full vote, the same voting strength as so many countries, so much bigger. So that was one little part in the Maldives affairs that I was involved in. But they were also a time of slightly, well, more than slightly, some strains in the relationship with the UK, because in the southern end of the Maldivian archipelago was Gan, the island of Gan, which had an airstrip and which British Royal Air Force used as a staging post to ferry British troops to the Far East, to Malaysia and Singapore, and places where there were British troops stationed in those days. And the island of Gan broke away, or tried to break away from the government in Mali, and that caused a bit of a wrinkle in the relations with the UK. But it was resolved a few years later, and relations have been very good ever since. So that's my knowledge of the Maldives then. But from a very, very basic economy to a massive tourist destination. They're just opening the Times a couple of days ago, a full-page advertisement with photographs of the Maldives. When in the 1960s, very few people in Britain had heard of the Maldives or could have placed it on a map. Now everybody knows where the Maldives is because it is such a thriving tourist destination. And it's come a very long way in that time, and hopefully will continue that level of progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Peter. And you have had a lot of experience with dealing with the Maldives and Sri Lanka and those countries in Asia. Thank you for all your help at that time.
I suppose I could say a few words about the report. I mean, just to reiterate what Sir Peter said, Maldives is an extremely blessed landscape, has done amazingly well over the years. It's also got a very rich culture, business culture, and attracts a lot of talent from around the world in many sectors. That really propels it to be the leader in South Asia in terms of GDP per capita. And I think the World Bank has estimated something like 6.5% is the latest figure for 23. I think that will be confirmed pretty soon. And that's on the back of some 1.8 million visitors in 2023, which would be a record in the Maldivian history, and it's a very impressive number. And if you take the fact that some of the European markets have been struggling and the level of world travel hasn't fully recovered to pre-COVID levels, it makes that achievement even more remarkable. And to some extent, I think the Russians and the Chinese have contributed somewhat to that number as well. Our report is based on primary as well as secondary data. And we also relied on our baseline study, which we did in 2015, when our team went on the ground, literally counting buildings in Hulu Male and Male and estimating their square foot area for residential, commercial, and retail. And in this report, we've updated it to 2023 and looked at 3 of the most significant sectors, tourism, of course, and along with that, construction and real estate. And I think we're very lucky to have experts on our panel representing a wide range of industries and expertise. So we can kick on with that, if that's okay, yeah?
Okay, so in order to get this panel discussion underway, let me introduce you to the panel. We have Mr. Mufaddal Idris Kumri, who is the CEO of the Maldives Islamic Bank. He has over 25 years experience, commercial banking experience, that covers business strategy, digital technology, corporate banking, retail banking, and wealth management. We also have Mr. Ahmed Aslam, who is the Director of Strategy Management at the Housing Development Corporation. Again, he has a lot of experience, professional experience in financial and real estate industry. We also have Ms. Ibtishama Ahmed Said, who is the CEO and Managing Director of the Maldives Finance and Leasing Company. And she again has a history of banking and finance, aviation, and healthcare. We also have from Sri Lanka, Dr. Anil Priyanka Bandavitane, who is the Executive Director of Capital Investments Maldives, a Senior Business Consultant for the Research Intelligence Unit, and a Director of Finlay's Maldives Limited. So that's the panel. And one person, the most important person in the panel is Mr. Roshan Madawala, who will be moderate this session. He is the CEO of the Research Intelligence Unit, and he has got past involvements with the Commonwealth Secretariat, the Asian Development Bank, the World Bank, and the Sri Lanka Prime Minister's Office. Roshan, over to you to moderate the session.
Thank you, William. And just to mention that William is our Associate Director in London, and he's been with us from the beginning. Thank you very much. Right, let's kick on. As I said, it's been a very challenging few years, not least because of the external shocks that the region has had to face. I'd like to briefly ask, starting with Mufaddal, how you navigated the recent external shocks from your industry's perspective.
Okay, a very good afternoon to everybody, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The banking industry in the Maldives has been pretty resilient over the last many years. If I were to just give you two parameters to appreciate the health of the industry, a few of the parameters, the deposit mobilization in the country, if I would take a 4-year period from 2020 until 2023 November, where the figures have been released, we have added about 16 billion rupiahs to the deposit in the country. On the financing side, we've nearly added about 9 billion plus of financing over the last 4 years. The NPA levels over the last decade have been pretty controlled. On the contrary, they have improved quite a bit. The provision coverage ratio has been quite good, and the regulatory capital of most of the banks are pretty resilient, right? In the case of some of the banks, they exceed much more than the regulatory need of 12% under the Basel regime. The overall performance of the sector in terms of profitability has been very similar. We have seen most of the banks, or rather all of the banks, being profitable. The 4 local banks, as I call them, and then the branches of the foreign banks have been pretty profitable in their outlook. Of course, there are challenges, and let me try and get you the challenges as to what exactly we face in the country. One of them we face is about the sharing of the infrastructure in the country. We do not currently have an arrangement where we share the payments infrastructure in the country. We still have banks setting up their own ECRMs, which I feel is not the way correct to be done. We need to share the ECRMs. We have done progress on that. We have shared our payment machines with the industry free of charge to customers of other banks. The central bank has launched the instant payment mechanism, which is pretty useful in order to facilitate instant payments. Let me also touch base upon the digital infrastructure, where we see a lot of issues. We still do not have a common KYC platform available in the country as far as the identity of the customer establishment is concerned, and the KYC. We need to build that platform. The IFAS platform that the government offers needs to be used a lot more by banks. We have started using it for our KYC and for our customer onboarding. We also need to work a lot as far as the registration of the mortgage is concerned. That process needs to be streamlined quite a bit. There is also a lot of challenge when it comes to delinquencies in the sector. When it goes to the courts of law, it takes a lot of time for you to realize your assets. Now, this leads to a lot of delay, and there is a cost involved in it. So the court process needs to be hastened, as well as the ability of institutions to liquidate the acquired assets. This will help us reduce the overall cost of our operations to a large extent. The other element where we need on the digital side, is the cost of the telecom. I strongly believe that there is a need to further reduce the affordability as far as the broadband and other areas are concerned, right? And there is also a need for the country to have very strong laws as far as digital security is concerned. They are not of the levels that are needed to be. They need to be worked upon. More transparency needs to be incorporated, and the overall security measures in the banking system needs to be enhanced to a large extent. On the regulatory side, I would say the MMA has become, which is the central authority in the country, they have become a lot more resilient of late, and they have started monitoring the liquidity of the banks. They've also started monitoring a lot of other ratios in the banking system to ensure that we are able to withstand any of the shocks that would come our way in the economy to a large extent. The other challenge we have is on the sustainability part. Now, a lot of things are happening globally on the sustainability. We as institutions, financial institutions, need to do quite a bit to ensure that our operations are sustainable. We do give due credence to the environment at large, ensure that our financing goes in line to what is needed for the larger benefit of the nation at large, right? There is a lot of more cooperation needed between the public and the private infrastructure projects, because we do believe the private sector needs to play a bigger role as far as the infrastructure is concerned. A lot of laws need to be brought in to facilitate investment, FDI investments into the country. Current regulations are a little irksome, bureaucratic, and the measures are needed to tackle the parallel market for the dollar, right? Banks need to become the mainstay of FX transactions. That's one way to build confidence and to ensure that we're able to also bring some kind of sanity in the way the dollar to the rupiah parity is to be maintained, because that is a direct effect on inflation. It creates a lot of inflationary pressures into the country if that doesn't happen. The other worry we as banks face is the external debt situation of the country and the increasing fiscal indiscipline that we see. So that's another challenge for us as institution, to ensure that the country doesn't, the debts of the nation do not spiral out beyond control, because these could have repercussions. We have seen what happened in Sri Lanka when the debt was not utilized in a proper manner, right? The problem that we see largely is the revenues on the government side do not show a resilient growth compared to the expenses. If you look at the 2024 budget, the expenses are going to grow from 43 to 49 billion. The revenue is hardly showing an increase of $1 billion. So the deficit keeps on increasing, which will lead to higher external and internal debt. Now, that's not the right thing. What we believe is it is good to grow with debt, but it is also essential to ensure that the revenues are adequate enough so that the servicing of the debt is not a problem for the nation. Now, any such kind of a shock, it will affect the banking system. So we cannot be immune from these shocks at large. But overall, I have the strong sense of belief that the nation is moving towards a very good economic growth, right? We will see the next decade to be the decade of extremely good growth into the country. The new government has shown a lot of positiveness. They are announcing a lot of infrastructure projects that's needed for the country. Yes, there is an issue as to where the money will come from, but I'm quite sure we'll be able to arrange that. There is an element of positivity all across, and I see good winds of change, sir, in the coming days.
Thank you, Mufadal. That was quite comprehensive. We'll get back. I think you touched on a couple of very important things, one of which is, of course, being pegged to the US dollar and the plus side and potential drawbacks of it. And obviously, the second one is a concern. As you said, Sri Lanka has had a horrendous currency crisis, which we hope Maldives will completely avoid. I don't think Maldives is in that danger zone. We'll hopefully come back to discuss this a little bit more. But let me turn to Ibtishama. From your industry perspective, what's your take on how the Maldives has emerged out of the recent turbulence? I think you need to unmute, Joe.
Thank you. And as my colleague has highlighted, yes, the banking industry has always been very resilient, and so has the Maldivian economies. Now, 2022, there was a record decline in GDP, about 32%. However, it picked up in the coming year at 37%. So it indicates positive trends. And the economy has recovered with a nominal GDP in 22, about 6.1 billion, also surpassing the highs of pre-COVID 2019. And in the financial industry, we are a non-banking institution, but governed by MMA. So we follow the similar prudential regulations and compliance regulations. The NPL levels in the industry was impacted in 2019. It recorded the highs of an average 9%. But however, following years, it's come down significantly to 6% in the industry. However, individual banks will be significantly lower. There are shifts in business models, as my colleague highlighted, more towards digitalization and compliance to emerging regulations. with digitalization, with fintech taking majority of acceptance, and with generations expecting 24-hour service. Now we have also incorporated in our strategic plans the digitalization concept as a key strategic milestone, and we continue to monitor progress on it. And there are rising expectations with the tech-savvy social media channels and reaching out to our demographics through social media channels. Customer retention has become a little bit of a difficult situation with our competitors offering more competitive rates and moving towards at a fast pace towards digitalization. So having said that, I will not go in detail because my colleague has majority covered the industry trends. And I do not foresee Maldives' economy has been very resilient, and I do not foresee, even with the budget deficits, we've always managed to stay resilient. Even during COVID, the economy has survived through that. So in terms of revenue, I think there's a growth in revenue in government indicated over the years since 2019. So yes, there are additional projects or infrastructure projects that are undertaken. The debt situation is majority also due to public SOEs undertaking projects, which are not part of the capital budget, of course. In 22 there was tourism and tax and non-tax related revenue collections did increase, but 23 there was a slight decline, I believe, also due to some policy changes. So in the coming years, I do see the same trends continuing.
Thank you, Tian, for that. Just curious, you mentioned fintech, and is the fintech take-up higher in the Maldives than in other countries in the region? Do you know?
Not really. Compared to the region, it is there's a growing interest. However, we are yet to quantify the demand or the interest or in our country.
Okay.
But yes, it forms a big part and parcel of the finance industry.
Absolutely, of course, yeah. We'll get back to Mufaddal on it in a bit. Let me now turn to Dr. Priyanka and Ahmed. Starting with Dr. Priyanka, you've obviously witnessed over the last 15 years the transformation of the Maldivian landscape with some amazing mega infrastructure projects. Which of these projects do you think has had the largest impact on driving investment into the Maldives, past, current, and potentially future as well? You need to unmute, Dr. Priyanka.
Thank you, Roshan, and hello to all the panelists. It's actually after 2004, the tsunami, Maldives entered an era of urbanization where there was huge in-migration from islands to the central region, Mali region. And of course, the biggest catalyst for development was Mali, now which is in the third phase now. And we are talking about another Ras Mali, which is another, urban development. So urbanization actually happened in a way that nobody expected, because after tsunami of 2004, people felt that it is better to be in the Mali region, which was the least affected out of all the atolls. And there was a huge influx of foreign investments as well as interest on the climate change and various other things. So in fact, I went to the Maldives in 2008, and the thing that I can tell is that up to the time 2008, there was a regime which was there for 30 years, which had developed tourism and all the things that I saw there at that time. Even Ulumale first phase happened under that regime. And then I left Maldives at the end of 2016, by which time I've seen 4 presidents. So 30 years we had one president, and the balance, 8 years that I was there, I've seen 4 presidents. So you can imagine the biggest challenge Maldives has is a political one and the political policy, because we will come to that later about the expats involvement and also how Maldives is managing the financial sector, as Iftishama and Mufadal said. They are doing pretty good because the resilience of the financial sector, the depth of knowledge and the resources that they have managed to get from different countries, and also the multilaterals and World Bank, IFC, ADB, all are interested because Maldives is a test case in terms of sustainability. I mean, as you all know, I think Sir Peter would know, when Maldives suggested that they should go into tourism, the World Bank said it's not going to work for you. So they actually bucked the trend, that was going in the world, that tourism can only happen in non-Muslim countries. They managed to create a massive impact on tourism. So 30 years later, we are very impressed of the achievements that Maldives has made. Where the biggest challenge comes from housing. Because right now, the current government's policy, there is a need for about 113,000 units, which is a deficit of around 90,000 housing units are needed in the Mali region, right? So 65,000 is going to be placed in Ras Mali. So the whole trust, the expats, the labor force, they need about 260,000 labor force, and also the ups and downs in the growth. Sometimes you get to a growth rate of, I think it went ridiculous, like 27% or something like that, and then it comes down to 12%. The reason is like when you build a bridge or when you develop an infrastructure projects, right? The growth rate will climb and then it will come down. So we don't know what the stable growth rate would be in the Maldives. That is yet to be seen because it's still work in progress. Maldives has been work in progress since it got like 2008 multi-party system. But as Ibtishama said, and as Fadil said also, I too have a lot of faith that they won't go down the road that Sri Lanka did. Because in 2010, when the World Bank IMF came and did an assessment of Maldives, they said Maldives can only last for another couple of years. The financial system is going to break. And it was Koshimatai at that time who was the country manager for the Maldives and Sri Lanka. And then I argued with him, you don't see the economy of the Maldives because there is an unseen element. There is a huge informal economy. The way I think Muslim trade happens, like Islamic finance. I mean, HDFCB opened the first Islamic window just after the Bank of Islam, Islamic Bank came to existence. So I think there are a lot of things that they can do in terms of going towards, that basically halal tourism and then sustainable energy, because the energy bills are huge. And I think the world is going to help them because even right now, ADB is looking at sustainable development, and IFC, there's a visit planned early next month. I think most of Ibtisham will be meeting them. I'm sure Fadil as well will be meeting them. And they wanted a briefing from me, and I was optimistic about the Maldives. And I think with that support, as long as they don't go down the road that Sri Lanka did in terms of corruption, I think they can keep their head, keep their head above water, literally.
Thank you, Dr. Priyanka. Very, very interesting and a good reflection over the medium term as well. And interesting, you noted that the World Bank said tourism wouldn't work in the Maldives. They have not always got it right. I think in Bangladesh, they said the bridge that was proposed wouldn't work, the Padma Bridge, but they went ahead and did it anyway, and it was a massive hit. So just goes to show. And right, just turning to Ahmed, what would you say are the most important or significant infrastructure projects? I mean, there's a couple in progress at the moment, right? The airport expansion and the Greater Mali connectivity project, and as Dr. Priyanka said, the one coming around the corner, the Ras Mali. So What's your take on this, and what kind of investment opportunities do you think we can expect from these mega projects?
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much, and assalamu alaikum. Yeah, so there are a couple of projects which is coming up. If I highlight, yes, one is the Tilamale Bridge, which has been started uh, 2 years back, which is supposed to be completed in the coming years, and then of course, our entrance of the tourism is the airport. Airport project is supposed to be completed, so we are expecting a much larger capacity will be poured on that. Again, we have the port relocation to Tilafushi. And also there are huge projects for increasing the land mass in the Maldives, which is the one of the basic necessity in this area, as Mr. Brinka has also highlighted. That's one of the reason why Holomale and Holomale Phase 1 and again Holomale Phase 3 is coming up. And also there's expansion for Gulifaro, Tilafushi, as well as Giravar. And in additionally, there is a Rasmale, which is going to be like a 3 times greater than the existing Holomale Phase 1 and 2. So we are expecting like a more than 1,600 hectares, more than 1,600 hectares will be adding value to this land mass. So it's going to be a huge opportunity for the investment. Because the reclamation is only one part of it. In addition to that, the development, for example, road infrastructure, as well as the water and sewer and electricity networks, we have to build, as well as the development. It is not limited only for the housing, but also like a tourist developments as well as commercial developments. We are looking forward to developing these areas. So I believe that with these mega projects and infrastructure projects, it will be really giving opportunity for the investment in Maldives. Of course, currently tourism, again, we are saying the integrated tourism islands. In even Olomale Phase 2, we have a concept called Urban Isle, where we are opening up a lot of opportunities for the hotels, so which will be creating a lot of investment opportunities, as well as increase in the demand for the tourists, because there's only a few, only one hotel in this Mare area, where we call this the Island Hotel, where with this opportunity there will be large hotels integrated or connected to the direct to the Male or airport. With the Rasmale, of course, it will be also open up for the commercial, industrial, and also the housing. Mr. Prinka has also highlighted that current government is planning to build more than 65,000 housing units, including the land allocations for this area. So will be a massive increasing in the population. We are not only expecting only the Malay people will be migrating, but because of the development we have seen in the past, the peoples are migrating from metros, almost like a 12% or 9 to 12% migration we are seeing from the last census. So of course, again, another trend is like there are population moving trend to the capital cities. So this will be huge opportunities for the investment, I would say. So I believe these are the major developments which will be bringing development. This, of course, this will be bringing developments as well as the business investment opportunities, not only construction, but also financing opportunities, investment opportunities, as well as the development opportunities. So this will be a lot of opportunities, I will be saying, in this area.
Thank you, Ahmed. Ahmed, for the benefit of many of us, including our listeners, would you be able to shed a little bit more light on the nature of what Ras Mali would look like? Is it going to be a mixed development zone with residential, commercial, leisure? Will it have industrial, for example?
Yes, as per the current plan that is there, is not only a residential but similar model where we have Holomale as well. So it will be a mix of residential, because we need a residential population to boost the other So, I mean, small, medium, even large economic activities, because we have seen like a phase two in Holomale has been increasingly developing very rapidly because of the huge population. So, of course, with the population, it will be increasing. There are plans for the industrial as well as commercial, as also like specifically for hotels, hotel development or tourism industry opportunities will be also opening, I guess, for the current plan.
Fantastic. That brings me on to the next question, which, as you rightly said, with such a high urbanization rate, I think Maldives has one of the highest rates of urbanization in the world. Where does that leave real estate financing? What has been your experience with real estate financing? Over to you, Mufaddal.
Yes. Now, before I start to talk on the real estate financing, one aspect we mentioned about was the growth rate in the Maldives for the economy, right? Some of them saying it's fluctuating, but in reality, I do see a high single-digit growth rate in the GDP. We experienced about 8.89% last year. We're expecting it to be about 4 to 5%, but I still hope and I feel strongly that we will continue to maintain 8 to 10% growth rate on the GDPs, especially this government is pretty clear on their economic agenda. We also shouldn't forget that the Maldives has an exclusive economic zone of 1 million square kilometers, right? The ocean is the strength of the Maldives, right? And if you look at it, I personally feel the ocean is the next economy of the world, right? There is a lot of wealth in the ocean. There is a lot of food in the ocean, right? It's going to happen. A lot of reclamation projects are going on in the country directly related to real estate. And all these reclaimed areas can be utilized for multifarious purposes. Agriculture, poultry, farming, right? You name it, it can be done, right? There is a lot of, as Mr. Aslam did mention, Telefushi, right? That's going to change the face of the country to a large extent, right? There's a port coming up over there. There's lots of warehousing facilities. Manufacturing is being promoted by the government to a large extent, right? So there is a lot of excitement in the nation currently, and we will see more than single high-digit growth rate in the GDP. Now, coming to the real estate, it is the second largest section of the GDP after tourism. Let's talk about tourism later when we do get that question. Now, as far as the real estate is concerned, it's divided into three segments, I feel. One is the residential segment, right? Mr. Aslam has pointedly mentioned, and earlier Dr. Anil also mentioned it's a vast need to house the burgeoning population, not just in Malé, but across the atolls. And there is a lot of migration to the urban areas that needs to be handled. Number two is a need for a lot of commercial establishments, right, to set up. So you have got many commercial and residential units being set up across the country. You have private developers playing a key role. You have the government housing, which also plays a key role. Now, I strongly believe that the government should try and stay away from the housing part of it by subsidizing, because that is an unnecessary expense. It is essential for us to ensure that people in the country earn good, decent levels of income so that they are able to manage their EMIs on the housing. Let the banking sector play a key role in providing financing, right? Subsidy should come to an end, right? The private sector is playing a key role. There is also the individuals. You see, a lot of properties in Malé and Hule Malé are being developed by individuals. Now, when I say individuals, these are families who say that I will build a 10-story apartment block where the down story, for the ground and the first could be commercial and the remaining is then rented out. So we do a lot of these kind of end user financing. We do financing for the project, and the end user financing part of it, which is the individual, that is significant, quite significant, right? We've seen a growth last year. We will see decent growth this year, 25 and 26. When most of the many other projects come to fruition, we will see the number of units in Hulumala increasing, 7, 8, 10,000 plus units. The need is humongous. Once the Ras Malé starts developing, there is another need over there. Telefushi also, we are seeing a lot of corporates trying to facilitate the building of warehouses and other commercial establishment. So the demand is pretty high, right? The rates at which we provide housing for the individuals is in single digit, right? 9% is what we provide housing finance at, right? to many of the projects and to the developers and also to the individuals who are constructing their own apartment blocks. We provide at about 12 to 13, 14%. That's the range at which it is going on. The retail side, the tenor goes right up to 25 years, 20, 25 years. On the project financing stage for the developers, it's about, private developers and the individuals, we go up to 10 to 15 years based on their capacity to pay and the rentals. But we primarily will see a real estate cycle come into the country. We cannot always expect the property prices to be on an upsurge. There has to be some kind of a fall in the value of the property. We do expect that, right? We also expect with the surge in the availability of units, there will be a fall in the rentals as well, right? So those rentals are primarily the hallmark for us to gauge the EMIs for the individuals who construct the properties. We also realize that Maldives is largely a consumer spending nation, right? The savings rate is pretty low. So in case of any economic downturn, the sector of the economy that first gets affected is the real estate, right? People stop paying up for their mortgages, and we could see a need for trying to reposition, right, or realign the EMIs for a longer tenor. So we haven't come through that cycle, but we should be conscious as the country grows to meet its Herculean, appetite for more real estate. There is a possibility that these cycles could come and destabilize. And there, both the banking sector as well as the government would need to play a significant role. There are times we need to, it heats up, the market heats up. So we need to cool the market a little bit, be conscious of ensuring that the property is available at the right rate, and speculation in all sorts need to be avoided. Currently, majority of the property sold is for end users. We do not have much of secondary market trading, but as the units go up, secondary market trading will happen. People will use it for investment purposes. And then there is the question of price escalation, which may see a fall. So this is in short my take on the real estate market. But yes, it requires a lot of more funding in the coming years. And the government expects banks to play a critical role, as well as HDFC and the MFLC and others to play a very strong role in the housing sector. And this has to be filled by the local banks. We can't expect the branches of the foreign banks to do that role.
Yeah, excellent, Fadil. Thank you for that. As you rightly said, the Maldives had been enjoying one of the highest rental yields in the region for many years, and demand was always well ahead of supply due to the fact that, the scarcity of housing, especially at all levels, actually. And we have been monitoring the upper end of the apartment market, for example, where developers would find that literally before launching a product, that the units would be sold in Male and then later in Male. And then I think one of the most informed and knowledgeable people we met in the last trip was Ahmed Aslam, who's here, luckily. And as he pointed out, there was a boost of some 15 to 20% of Hulumale property values after the bridge was completed.
Right.
Years ago. Remarkable. And I think every time we go, we see new changes. Another one which we've noticed is, I think Dr. Priyanka will obviously be able to comment. A few years ago, you would hardly see four-wheeled vehicles, but now I've even seen a few sports cars in my last trip. So it's a question I want to direct at Ittishama from the leasing perspective. According to the data, some 80% of the 131,000 vehicles registered in the Maldives are two-wheelers. With the Greater Maldives Connectivity Project and the already completed bridge, do you expect to see changes in those statistics as well? And that would be of interest to many people, I think.
Yes, thank you. As you've correctly stated, the number of registered vehicles, 80% is two-wheelers. Minimal is four wheels. But then again, even though the connectivity is established, there's also the public sector transport that is also being developed. and the narrowness or the congestion that is faced within the connecting island, which is central Male, it necessitates that they have two-wheelers or small-scale vehicles to navigate around. So I do see, even current trend, we do see a lot of requests coming in for four-wheelers, but majority is for commercial purposes, for taxi purposes, not for connectivity or not for family use, but to get that additional boost in income. And with Tilamale being connected, it's mostly, I would say, commercial vehicles and commercial ports will move in from there for logistical purposes. And the public sector transport will also increase their frequency and numbers, which is also in plans. And families are moving towards more nuclear. So yes, that will be an added need for, again, I'd say two-wheelers will continue to dominate. But then if you look at the Maldivian statistics, there's the growing population of 18-year-olds currently. So that's when you start to get your first vehicle lease of a two-wheeler. So that's the segment that will still drive the demand for two-wheelers.
Thank you, Ihtishama. Mufaddal mentioned a borrowing rate of between 9 and 13% for real estate finance end user. Would that be a good estimate for the leasing market as well?
No, our rates are high comparatively, as indicated, that because our cost of funds are higher as well. We're not a deposit-taking institution, so we borrow at a high cost and we lend competitive rates. So we do not go on housing loans to one digit, neither do we give longer tenors. So we forecast on the shorter term. So if the real estate sector is impacted adversely, we always forecast for a shorter term, so we control our risk within what can be managed during a foreseen future.
Right. Thank you, Tishama. Before I continue, just a reminder, we're getting questions from the listeners. The audience, please do continue to send your questions. After the next round, we'll take a 5-minute break when we'll play the videos, and we'll quickly compile the questions, and we'll get back to
Roshan, I would just like to make one point, I forgot to mention on the real estate part, that's for further discussions, is that I do also see an opportunity for foreign ownership in the country, right? Maybe at some point of time, if that gets done, what many of the Middle Eastern countries, especially the UAE, has done.
The golden visa system, yes.
Right. So that would really help to grow the demand. And there is also the other element of the expat population increasing that will also have an impact on the rental market to that extent.
Absolutely. You've actually second-guessed my next question, which I was going to ask from Dr. Priyanka is, as Mufaddal rightly said, Maldives attracts amazing talent, continues to do so from around the world. I think the last count, something like 1/3 of the population are actually non-Maldivian. So Dr. Priyanka, what's your take on the role played by the diaspora, especially with housing?
Yeah, the unemployment rate in the Maldives is around like 4%. So it's not really, that problematic. But as Ms. Ihtishama mentioned, there are a lot of young people entering the market. And unfortunate problem is we have the drug addiction, which is something that has to be arrested very quickly because it's a very young population in the Maldives in terms of, not an aging population like in Western countries. So the youth are always, getting into, unless they are put in the correct channels, they have the opportunities, there is a danger. The expats need is not just because there is no workforce in the Maldives. It's just the types of work that they will do. And also, most of these labor forces that come in, it's a temporary nature. But there's another danger now. There is a kind of, especially from Bangladesh, I think they had to even limit the numbers coming in. There was long-term, long-term labor. Basically, they come and stay, and then some of them are non-documented, and they will not even have the visas and all that, and they, for generations, it could continue. So there is another danger which they have to, look after. Where the high end is concerned, Maldives is one of the most qualified per capita countries. If you take the number of PhDs in the Maldives, I think per capita is one of the highest in the world. Almost all the people who are able to study and get educated, they do that. They value education. So you got two extremes. One, where you got the youth who are maybe getting into the wrong end of the digital economy. They are the users. I mean, I think the penetration of mobile phones in the Maldives is something like four times the population. Right, so you got this problem of the demographics and also the in-migration. Most of the time, it's the youth that come from outside, and this really happened during the time that 2012. There was huge in-migration protesting, that they needed more out of the government, and then most of them decided to stay. So there's a lot of things going on. The crime situation is not ideal. It has to improve a lot. And decongestion of Male is a huge priority. The time that I was there during Dr. Wahid's government, we had a program called Vishipai, which is the decongestion of Male. And if that had worked, Male would be a pleasant place to live, because there would have been, more people like enjoying free space. At the moment, if there is an earthquake or something where all the people have to come out of the buildings, I think about, 1/4 can remain on land, 3/4 will be thrust into the ocean. That is the density of the population in Male. So therefore, I think this Ras Male is a timely initiative, because you're not going to, I think there was another thought, previous government policy, to actually create urban centers in Addu and Hanimatu, Hurudufoshi, Hanimatu, in that area, north and the south. It didn't work. I mean, we've given housing loans to Addu, right? Where we've gone and seen the properties when they're going into default, the people are in Male. They built a beautiful house in Addu. The registered population at that time was something like 35,000 in Addu. And then only 15,000 were there. The balance were in Male, right? So you have this problem. And I think the expats coming in, it's actually not going to be a permanent thing, because I think a lot of the Maldivians are now taking up jobs that are, that have been given to expats. And it is mandatory, even large companies, your second in command has to be, even if you're the CEO now, for instance, my job was to build capacity. And I'm happy that I did, because most of the people that I recruited and developed are in very high places now in the stock market, finance ministry. They have actually, found that the work ethic helps them to develop. Work ethic is something that you really, really need to improve in the Maldives. And I think with that, the demand on expat population is going to be less. And I think they have to look at a development plan. But as I said, Maldives is still work in progress. I mean, if you take Mali, it's a huge construction site. It has been there from 2004. People are building and building. There's no end to building. I mean, at some point, it has to stop, right? Because Mali can only accommodate so many people, right? So there has to be a lot of policy changes in order to, once you create that space, as Mr. Ahmed said, Mr. Aslam said, it's actually very important to have critical mass, to develop other industries, to develop, restaurants, then transport. All that is wonderful, but still, you got to have good, proper urban planning, which I hope the way forward. I mean, Ras Male, they're trying to make it a green city. I don't know how far it'll be successful. I hope it is. And then sustainability is something that, World Bank is looking at where Maldives is concerned in terms of renewable energy. At the moment, ADB is looking at very closely, and IFC is also looking at sustainable development through renewable energy. So I think with those things, we can look forward to a good future for the Maldivians. Only thing is, suddenly changing plans, changing policies. Now, earlier national housing policy we tried to develop but it did not happen. If there's a national housing policy, then I think it's easy for handling this urban congestion. So
right, thank you, Dr. Priyan. I'm getting a long list of questions from the audience, which I will ask the panelists, and I'll do my best to get everything in. So before we get into that, I just wanted to check with Ahmed. What is your view on the role played by expat in Hulu Mali in particular, which has been the game changer, or the game has already changed? The expats at one end of the market, and the other end of the market is, as we know, hugely influenced by various government policies, right? And we've already heard some of our experts criticize the government getting involved in the market to intervene, which can obviously disrupt and have externalities. But on the other hand, the government has an obligation to fulfill its plan to move its population around the Mali Atoll and provide decent and adequate housing. So what is your take at the two ends of the market, given that you have a very detailed knowledge of Hulu Mali over the last 10 years?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Regarding the expect, yes, of course, it becomes huge issues. Where, as you have correctly mentioned, 1/3 of the population is representing the expect. Again, Mr. Brinka has highlighted that undocumented or those people who have not proper work permit is there. So that's, I mean, expect we can define two ways. One is, of course, there are mainly two industry. One is the tourism industry, other one is the construction industry. So we are seeing most of the people are working as like a labor force. This area, I believe that there are lack of resources in Maldives, so definitely we need the laborers to do the job. However, at the same time, I think with the introduction of minimum wage, still that issue has not resolved. Okay, so this could be again reconsider whether that amount is sufficient enough or not, because whether the Maldivians still waiting for a higher pay for them to do these odd jobs. So there's one angle. So that means the still the, I mean, the supplier or the construction side, the developers always look forward the cheaper supply or the reduce the cost. So on that angle, of course, they want to go for the foreigners. Even right now, with the minimum wage, it's considered the foreigners are cheap. So one reason is that. On the other hand, of course, there are a lot of foreign I can say is the experts are also working. Before Muzaffar also highlighted that demand for the foreign foreigners also housing need. Housing need, for example, like there is a housing need for the foreigners. I have seen earlier as mentioned that the private or premium or luxury apartments mostly demanded by foreigners. So they are like a professional workers. So those things are also increasing. So that's why the demand is still, I can't see the demand is declining, even though the construction cost or the property prices are increasing. So definitely, even right now, Maldives is allowed for the foreigners. The 99 years lease still is not restricted. So the lease basis, we have already opened one of the project in Holomale as well. So that 99 years lease is allowable. So that foreign, yes, of course, foreigners can come and invest on this housing as well as the programs they can participate. So yes, the mainly the issue, if we talk about the housing, I mean the expat issue, currently the government also taking some necessary steps, which there are requirements for controlling the I mean undocumented people. So it has been impacting our local or commercial, I can say small medium enterprises or the commercial component because of this, and the opportunity for the locals is reducing. There's another schemes in Maldives also they introduce, giving the Maldivian first opportunities, or the first offer, where the tourism industry, they have the regulation saying that more than 50 or 60% should be locals. However, they are always claiming there is a non-availability of the local people. At the same time, expatriates, we can say, is like for example, accounting industry or financing industry still is dominating by the foreigners. So those areas where we need to develop the peoples, again, I think the work culture or the work attitude has to be required to change in order to lead the industry by Maldivian.
So, Ahmed, can I ask you very quickly two specific questions which
Yeah.
have resonated amongst many of our clients in Mali and people who've invested?
Yeah.
A brief answer. On the one hand, the question is, should the government be giving bare lands, or would they be better off giving completed housing units? The second one, the fears of the rental yield diminishing because of various reasons, from the increase in supply in this year and last year as well. Would that not be counterbalanced by the continuous demand from? So I think we've distinguished between a migrant and an expat, right?
Yep.
So the expat is the one that typically demands the most luxurious apartments. They stay a few years and they go back. So would these two competing forces in the market play each other out? What impact will that have on rental yields at the top? Our analysis might suggest that the urbanization and the growth in the demand for expat workers will sustain rentals at tier 1 apartments, for example. On the other hand, what are the dangers of government giving bare lands to people, who may not even have finance to build on it, and may have to, seek it from, they could tie up with people with money who might, for example, ask for the ground floor. What will that do to zoning plans that were, there for phase 2 of Ulumali, for example? Would be? I know it's a really complicated question. Can we get a brief answer? Yeah.
First of all, you asked the question like whether it is a complete housing or not. Of course, in the last few years, we have given semi-finished houses for the people. I think what we have learned from them is even though we are giving the completed houses, the house is very much personalized for themselves. For example, if we talk about the current project where we are allocating is the Winners, where we have built the kitchen and then the kitchen set as well. However, the people desires change. Okay, so they change. But of course, luxury apartments, the demand is less. Again, in the luxury apartments, also the personalization is not limited, or they don't complete the kitchen sets. They give the option for the buyers to do their own kitchen set, even though the developer also give different options. So I think even social housing, that's something which could be done, is give the option for the personalizing their bedroom set or personalizing their kitchen sets. So that will be some good option for that. But from my personal experience, is most of the time, even though it is a social housing, it has been upgraded, or it has been completed change over time. That's one part of the question, I think, what you have asked. The second part is, of course, with the increasing of the luxury apartments, whether the market will be impacted. Of course, I can say is the initial stage. There are a lot of demands actually, even right now. The apartments are bought by the locals, okay, even though it is rented to the third party or the expats, as you mentioned. However, I will say still in Maldives, we don't have secondary market, as Mudaffir has mentioned. So we don't have the secondary market where there is nowhere we can say these apartments are unable to lease out. Okay, but so still there are huge demand. I will emphasize that earlier compared to the previously, why the demand might have increased. One reason is, of course, the banks have opened and given the opportunity for the end user financing. So this creates a lot of people for eligible for financing, and also I would say the purchasing power of people has been increased over the time. Even locals, they preferred, even, for example, like apartments where we are living, there are luxury apartments where a lot of locals are living as well. So which is giving the indication that the living standard of locals is also increasing. Of course, there are imbalances. Always there will be social category people, there will be luxury peoples. But most of the time, I see the middle level or luxury apartment level. Even if we could again currently give a much better rate, the luxury apartments demands or the middle level apartments, the demand will be higher. Since there is no proper mechanism, most of this even affordable people, they go and then end up with a luxury apartment, and that's one of the reason I think their desires change. If a right person goes into the social housing, they will not change it. Okay.
Absolutely.
So,
Thank you. Thank you.
so that's, I think, the answer.
No, I totally agree with you. I mean, our data suggests that especially those business owners in Mali are driving the luxury market, and they're not in the buy to live segment. They obviously buy to invest and for the rental yields, and they have been doing really well over the last 10, 15 years. Many of them have chosen to live in Mali, but they're very much hands-on when it comes to investing in Mali. Before we take a quick break to compile all these questions and fire them at you guys, would Sir Peter like to ask anything? Are you planning your next holiday to the Maldives, Sir Peter? Is there anything that you'd like to ask?
Looking at the picture, it looks as if I'm already there. So no plans at the moment. It's a bit far away, actually. If God had meant us to fly, he'd have given us the tickets. And so one day I hope, yes, to go, but no plans at the moment. No questions. I'm learning a lot, and very grateful to the many contributors. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to pass it over to the technical team. And while they play the video, I'll just get these questions in. Is everyone good to go on for like another 20 minutes? Is that okay after this? Yeah. Thank you, gentlemen and ladies. So, guys, would you like to play the video while I run through these questions? Thank you. Thank you for that. And a big thank you for everyone supporting the webinar. There's a lot of questions here in front of me. I think in the interest of time, we'll keep these as quick fire. There's a few aimed at specific panelists. I'll start with generic ones. There's one here. How significantly has the recent Indian boycott of travel impacted the Maldivian tourism industry? I'm not myself aware of this. Would anyone like to respond?
If I am to touch on that, actually last year, the Indian market very minimally undertook the Russian market. So the impact would be minimal to less if there's no such thing as boycott. I do still see arrivals, and I do still see the Indian operated and managed properties very active. So perhaps maybe it's a more social thing driven by public sentiment. The impact is yet to be seen on that. Whereas now Maldives has opened to Chinese market, direct flights from China and Hong Kong coming in. Middle Eastern market is growing. So as such, in terms of impact to tourism will be little or less, I'd say, on that. And also because India being our closest neighbor, closest ally, where we see is the average length of stay has really impacted with India overtaking the market. Insignificantly as it may be, it used to be average length close to about length of stay close to about 9%, which slid down to 7 to 5.6 to 6 during some of the periods. And the average spent from some markets are very less. So here, just today or yesterday, I was reading a news article which said that there's a record decrease in service charges to high-end resorts, which means that the high-end spenders are reducing, but the number of arrivals are increasing. So year on year, we see increases from 1.6 to 1.7 to this year, it surpassed 1.8. So that question, I think it's too preliminary to see the impacts currently.
Thank you, Ibtishama. Anyone else like to have
I'd just like to add a little bit to this.
Sure.
Number A, there is no need for any worries or concern about, because it's more of a social boycott. I think some of the resorts have actually put down their rates and offering great deals, and Indians and Chinese are deal hunters. Wherever they see a deal, they don't care about nationalism or any of these issues. Number two, we should be cognizant of the fact that tourism growth has not happened in the Maldives the way it should. Globally, you've got 1.3 billion people traveling as international visitors. The Maldives gets a paltry 1.8 billion. The problem is we need to raise this figure to 7 to 8 billion, right? So India is just not the question. It's how Maldives position itself. We need to have at least 1,000 resorts, right? The current 170 resorts, the guest houses, they're just not enough, right? There is a lot of more potential that we need to tackle. There is a lot of more spends that we need to get. These international travelers end up spending about $1.4 to $1.5 trillion. How much are we getting in the Maldives? A paltry sum. I think what's happened is we are not greedy enough to get a larger share of the tourism market. We need to get more and more. And we need to create these more and more resorts and open up to a large extent.
Thank you, Mufaddal. Anyone else on this topic? There's a follow-up question here, actually. It says, do you have any advice for small investors seeking to go into the guest house market, specifically building in the islands outside Male? Any advice for small investors getting into the guest house business?
Well, I just like to add to that, because we're getting a lot of proposals from guest houses to fund their construction. Right now, my two cents on this is that, one, you need to be a little careful because there are a lot of entrants. You should understand and appreciate how the hospitality business is run before you step into the guest house business, because ultimately this is also a kind of a mini resort, right? It's of course much cheaper than the big resorts. Average per day stay could cost you anywhere between $80 to $100 plus. People who come and inhabit these guest houses are the ones who want to enjoy the local heritage, the local culture, the local food. They do not want to spend lavish amounts on staying in five-star resorts. What they want to experience is more of the sea, the ocean adventure, right? So you need to be conscious. You need to build a whole ecosystem around it. It's not just putting up a guest house. You need to know how to run it. You need to manage the food well. You need to manage the ecosystem. You need to also know how to connect yourself in terms of marketing, because it's not just enough to set up a guest house. You need to market it real well. Remember, the resorts are where they are today because they do a lot of spend in marketing. You need to get connected to the intermediaries, right? You need to get connected to agents overseas and need to tap into the right segment of people to come in, right? And also remember, when you finance your guest houses, there is an EMI that you need to pay. Financially, you need to be disciplined. You need to manage your finances well. Running a guest house is not easy. It's become the new passion among many of them, but it is a lot more difficult than what it appears to be, sir.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I had a look at the data just a little while ago, and there has been a growth. I mean, hotel tourism has been fairly steady, but the growth has been predominantly in the guest house sector. And as you said, you're not worried about that. Also, the safari, the boat safari, and there has been, I think, some growth in the resorts as well. The concern, I think, was about spend per tourist, which is going down, given the problems that the world has been encountering, and in Europe as well.
Yeah, I think I
Go ahead.
agree with
Yes.
Muzaffar as well regarding the guest house. Of course, if you are trying to book any guest house close by Malay region or any destination which is close by any airport, right now you will be unable to get any bookings, even guest houses. So I think this affect, of course, tourism. There are season as well. So this time is very high. Guest house demands are increasing, as Muzaffar said, that people are not coming more this only for the luxury staying, but of course they are getting the services like the dive-in as well as the island hopping and then snorkeling and as well as other other activities. So I think the guest house demand is been increasing, and of course those people who have started small, now they are having like those people who started with 10 rooms or 8 rooms, now they have been like a 20 rooms or 22 rooms or even 40 rooms. So even we can see most of the islands, there are high-rise buildings even, including the if you call, especially in the area of Malay region. Okay, so with the airport again, government also expecting that local tourism as well as the international tourism, it will be growing in Maldives. So I think that's a good area to invest. Even that gives opportunity for the locals who have limited capital to enter into the tourism industry. So if you're going to resort, of course you have to have a huge investment, but in order to enter into the guest house business, you don't have to have a very huge amount. The middle level or small medium level of entrepreneur can get into the tourism industry and get some maximum benefit. I think that's very interesting area to get in as well.
Interesting point. Now, with the airport expansion, the capacity will go to 8 million, right, by 2030. That's what I have read. And presumably not all of that's going to be high end. So the guest house market does have, a huge potential, one would imagine. So I hope that answers that question.
And one more thing, Roshan, the tourism industry has to move away from Malay. There is a need to develop more on the north and go towards the south. Use the airports on the north, use the airports on the south. So you reduce the dependence on Malay as a tourism hub. Majority of the resorts currently are located in and around Malay. The reason is because if you get down on Malay, then there is another cost of getting into seaplane and traveling and the transit time. But if you're able to connect directly to airports that come in the north and south, then it reduces the time as well. And also the guest houses then can go ahead and be established in other parts of the country. They're much more beautiful, as a matter of fact, right? The south and the north are more beautiful. There are very pristine beaches which haven't been explored.
Very correct. Actually, if I could butt in there, this regional development of domestic airports has been the policy, but the problem is, chicken or egg situation. Which comes first, because creating the critical mass to go out there to these places, it's a fine balance really, because you invest in a regional airport, but then if the traffic is not enough, it turns out like Hambantota Mattala, right? Nice airport, but no air traffic. Okay, so the critical mass is the crucial thing. But of course, guest houses, which started in 2009, 2010, one way of democratizing tourism, so that money gets into the hands of the islanders, right? As Mr. Mufadal said, it has to move away from Mali, because most of the beauty now, Mali is hugely polluted. I mean, as a diver, I don't like to dive around Mali. I'd rather go to RIUNIT or Addu. Those areas are pristine, right? So the oceans are getting polluted, and obviously something has to be done about that. And then not just pollution in terms of what people put in as garbage, the diesel of the vessels that are traveling, all that is there. So the regional connectivity has to be developed. There are almost like 2,000 islands that are out there, and as Mr. Mufadal said, the 170 is really not enough. And guest houses only about, I think, less than 1,000, about 800 something guest houses are there. But this is a market that needs to be developed. But success breeds success. Like guest houses also, they're getting the business models right, because the demand, when you go to Maldives, the standards are very high. Even, it's not a house, they want a home. Even in social housing, right, they want to build a home, which is one good thing that I see, the dignity that they have, the pride they have. But of course, what happens with the congestion is that necessity becomes the mother of invention, and they're crammed into a room. And that lifestyle, the Maldivian lifestyle, is getting disturbed. So if you decongest Mali, if you move away from the central region and develop other areas, potential is there, because as Mr. Mufadal said, the sea territory is enormous, right? It's bigger than India, right, in terms of territory. So you can utilize that, and the numbers are small, about 500,000 people, less than 500,000. So I think everything there to be done. But then on social housing, I agree that the government should not be doing, but I think the Islamic banks and the Islamic model should be doing, because Ijara, Musharaka and Murabha, those are the things that we used at HDFC to develop social housing in faraway places. The government gives a concessional loan, and which we do it in terms of Islamic compliant, Sharia compliant mortgage. And they pay it, they don't own it. It's like social housing in the UK, I mean, like council housing, right? And housing association housing, like social landlords, right? That system has to be developed. And I think you can find a solution. But subsidies, yes, I don't believe even Asand has to come under an insurance model, not the way that it's been expanding. Otherwise, you're looking for trouble.
Now, Dr. Anil has touched upon a very wonderful subject, subsidies and the Asanda scheme and the government trying to. You're right, sir. That's what we said. Let's not subsidize. We also are not keen on seeing HDC coming into the role and trying to lease out the properties to individuals, because what's happening is they don't pay them. Once the government is involved, there is delinquency. I believe it's my birthright not to pay, which is wrong. And why should the taxpayers, the good customers, the good people of Maldives suffer the delinquency for the others? They're just taking their rights. There is tax money that is going in, right? Everybody has paid their hard-earned income and gone into that. We should not allow that. Let banks handle that. And yes, of course, we use our Ijara and the diminishing Musharaka module. We do DM, wherein we take the risk during the under construction period, and we only start charging the rentals once the property has been delivered. So there is a control that we follow up with the developers, we follow up with the contractors, and ensure that the property is built as with the specification and handed over to the people at large. And yes, you rightly mentioned about the Asanda scheme and some of the other social welfare measures. People in the Maldives do not realize that they are blessed, right? No country in South Asia offers such kind of facilities to its citizens as the Maldives does. The World Bank report says it's got the largest per capita beds in the country. The medical system is phenomenal, sir. You get paid to travel abroad and get yourself treated. It doesn't happen in many countries, and it takes a lot of money. But what happens is, with a period of time, the people start taking these things for granted. They do not realize the actual value behind it. There is a lot of sacrifices people have had to make for the country to have reached these levels. Now it is time that the private sector takes up the onus of the government, and the government uses the money for building infrastructure and create employment. That's my bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mufaddal. Actually, there is a question directed specifically at you, if I may. How does the Maldives Islamic Bank address the unique financing needs of SMEs, especially in tourism and real estate? What do you have an SME policy?
Yes, we do. We do have an SME policy. We rather encourage, or to be very candid, we do not have many large corporates on a book. We are not a very large bank, unlike BML, right? So most of our customers come into the SME bracket. So we not only help a lot of importers in the country when it comes to importing of essential commodities that are needed to run the economy. We also support a lot of guest houses. We also support a lot of construction activities that are undertaken by individuals. So our core portfolio is retail and SME. We welcome these customers, and in line with our philosophy to be a critical player in trying to uplift the masses and create the right social atmosphere in the country, we are keen, we support, we continue to sustain our business through the SME portfolio, and we do it across the industry. We do it in fishing, we do it for the fishermen, we finance their engines, we finance the acquisition of the new boats, right, the fishing nets, right. We also do a lot of construction-based activities in some of the atolls where people are building their commercial and residential properties, a lot of trading activities across the atolls. So it's not that we're limiting ourselves to Malé. We do that across the country.
Thanks, Mufaddal. There's another question here. Could we get the panelists' thoughts on the difficulty in getting dollars and the effect of these trends going forward? Any volunteers for this one? I mean, what is the difficulty in getting dollars? I have been reading about this as well.
There is a parallel market. In the parallel market, there is absolutely no difficulty in getting the dollars, provided you pay for it. Right? There is a premium. Right? There is a premium that fluctuates anywhere between 12 to 15%. In some days, they go up as well. Right?
Right.
The banking system does not have access to the dollars because we are debarred by the MMA from exchanging dollars at nothing more than the officially prescribed rates. Nobody wants to do that. You know, the exporters in the country are the fishing industry and the tourism industry. They are the ones who get the dollars, right? The government gets the dollars through MSCL and some of its operations. But the private sector refuses to exchange their dollars in the banking system. So we do not have access to those dollars. Now, there is a need for the government to try and curtail this market, because if you don't do that, it will spiral out of control at some point of time. I'm not saying that it's not, it is, right? We are just bystanders as banks. We can't do anything to get these dollars. And naturally, when customers come to us, we cannot offer them because we do not have access. Our allocation comes from the MMA, which is very limited. Yeah. So today, if you look at the importers, the allocation that they get from the banks is hardly 10, 5, 15%. The remaining 85 to 90%, they actually get it from the local market. And this is a direct link to the inflation, because if the dollar is high, they import it higher. Naturally, the domestic prices are going to be high.
Briefly, is there a way around it? I mean, you have the benefits of having your exchange rate system with the stability it offers to, you know, FDI, etc. This is the flip side.
Where is it? There is no way. There is no market for me to buy other than at the fixed rate.
Yeah.
Yes, Dr. Anil.
Again, this is actually part of that, what I spoke earlier, what you don't see, the black economy, if you like, or the unseen economy, you know, which is informal economy, which has to be regulated, because otherwise the banks are suffering, because basically it's not a level playing field. There are people who are operating like money changers and all that. They're not licensed. They are not monitored. You know, so you got that, and you know what, Sri Lanka is having this problem. But you know, there was a time that Maldives was very liberal about their dollar policy. but then it got increasingly difficult, and now you got a peg system. So you're on a tightrope. The black market rates I hear are phenomenal. You can buy dollars, enough of dollars in the country, but not in the right place, which is the banks, right? So I think that has to be addressed by the MMA at some point. I think you all have the meetings with MMA, that you have to impress upon them that it has to be regulated.
Dr. Anil, we have done our best with the MMA. I think it is not the MMA. Let's be candid about it. It is beyond the MMA's power. It is beyond their writ. It has to be the
finance
political
ministry,
masters who have to
Yes.
take the decision, and the
Yeah.
parliament at large.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, gents and ladies,
Yeah,
moving on.
If I add anything, yes, of course, I
Sorry,
agree
Ahmed. Yeah.
that the policy has to be changed, because even right now, some of the SOEs like HDC, where we are also having the currency risk, where we have to pay some of the dollar-rated loans, where there are certain limit MMA or central bank is providing, but apart from that, in case if you have to buy from the market is fluctuating. There are like at the moment, if you talk about the dollar exchange rate is 18, so it is the high season where there are a lot of dollars. We are saying it will be inflow, but however, it is not getting into the banking system. So that's why I think the main issue. So we can, solve this issue by changing the policies, because if these dollars are getting into the banks, definitely it will be resolving the issue, because we are not talking about unresolvable issues. Again, I don't see any country where I travel as well, or others have traveled, where freely we can buy the foreign currency on the roads or other agencies, or in the Maldives, even like a normal shop, they accept the dollar. So the tourist guy can come and then sell the dollars in the normal like a corner shop. So this even those things has to be restricted. I think it has to be more regulated. That's
Thank you.
the only way we
Sharma,
can.
any thoughts on it from you, on the dollar issue?
Sorry?
Anything to add?
I think my colleagues have covered it very beautifully. Dollars is not scarce. If we are almost a 99% import economy, and if there was a difficulty in getting dollars, you'll see the retail shops shelves empty. But it's thriving. It just comes at a cost, and it's the parallel market that drives the rate, and there's a huge demand. So it's not been addressed in the previous years. It will be very difficult to address at current point in time, because it's just a difficult topic, I'd say.
Right, we'll leave it to the policymakers, as Dr. Priyanka said. Here's a question which I particularly like. How do you see the future of remote work influence the demand for different types of real estate in the Maldives? And I think this is under the heading of tech and real estate. And in our research, we found that, and we've heard people in the Maldives say that urbanization has peaked because, Maldives being so unique is demonstrated the power of work from home, etc. Something obviously we see in the West and every part of the world, accelerated by, the recent lockdowns, etc. Any thoughts on this question? Do you think the future of remote work, specifically in the Maldives here, is going to affect the types of real estate, the demand for perhaps commercial real estate, or residential? Have you seen anything on the ground yet?
Well, I think during the pandemic, we had a lot of guests who came in and stayed for a long time, and they did what they had to do at the resorts when it came to their professional duties. But that's having said about that. But within the country, I am not a strong votary for work from home, because that's a very narrow-minded concept. And I say, you tell work to home to the farmers and to the butchers and to the salesmen, right? And the people who run the infrastructure in the country, can they work from home? No ways. It is the most disillusioned thing I've ever heard and seen, that work from home. It's been popularized by the tech companies, right? But we are social creatures, and we are just not considerate of a larger section of the humanity that needs to go out and work out in the sun on a regular basis because they are needed. Their hands are needed to get things done, right? So the whole concept of work from home is fallacious. It has to come to an end, right? And in a country like Maldives, people love going out, right? What is the purpose of staying caged in a house? It is horrendous, right? I think all those companies that promoted work from during the pandemic, right? They were not considerate of what was happening outside for those who wouldn't get that opportunity. But I think it's now far-fetched. People are out there, people let them work, and I don't understand this concept at all, sir.
Fantastic. Yeah, I would
Yeah.
personally agree with that. Anyone else?
Yeah, I agree with that also. I mean, there are certain industry it might be working, for example, even IT company like us, our some of the section like IT or designers or architects, they can work from home. But as for the said, like a construction guys or the site supervisors, they cannot work from home. And again, I have seen that, I mean, the work from home country like Maldives, where there is no I mean, the culture is very different. So the performance of the people has been affected from my perspective, work from home. But of course, I agree with some extent. Some areas there is a possibility and there are advantages, even work from home as well. Okay, so I'm not totally agreeing, as well as I say it is limitation is there.
Anyone else with any strong views on it? William?
Needs definitely go to work. Don't work from home. Because, as you rightly said, there are so many other people who have got to go out and work. They can't stay at home. And especially in a country like Maldives, where, especially in Mali, well, they need to go out, I would think, rather than stay indoors. That's my view.
Absolutely. And I think the social skills aspect of it is just as important as well, right? As Mufala said, we're social creatures and we need to interact with fellow human beings. All right, I'll move on to the next one. Geopolitics. The world is filled with external shocks these days. The Maldives is a very tourist-dependent economy. And I think we're running out of time as well, so this might be the penultimate question. What does the panel feel about the current risks on the horizon? And I will invite Sir Peter and William to contribute as well. Maybe a quick couple of minutes from everybody.
Well, I would assume it has to be climate change. Climate change is threatening all sorts of parts of the world, but Maldives has to be high on the list of places that will be affected by a rise in sea levels. I mean, just in the last week or two, we've seen news reports of chunks of the Antarctic ice breaking off the size of the city of London. They're going to add to the sea level. That goes on. Maldives are bound to be affected, and defence against that has to be a big issue for the Maldivian government.
Thank you. Anyone else, please? Geopolitical risks to a tourist-dependent economy or climate change? What's on the horizon?
Well, my bit in that, sorry, Sam, please go ahead. I'll stop.
In terms of climate change, I'd just like to touch upon something that Priyanka mentioned as well. There's a huge project undertaken by ADB, 73 million, where the average ton of waste that we produce, solid waste, 850 million, that project would actually recycle it back. And it's also connected to reduction of reliance on fossil fuels. The residual energy used will be again recycled back into fund another project of 250 use. So that we are working with the international stakeholders to address the climate change politics. Yes, the geopolitics is concerning. The current escalation of the Middle East poses concern for local and on a global perspective. So it's a very complex power dynamics we are speaking of here. So as a country that's heavily dependent on tourism and travel, we have to keep a very close eye on developments.
Thank you, Shama. Any other thoughts on this?
I would say, there is a little bit of threat globally. Today, we are seeing rogue nationalism creating bad blood between nations. We need to all calm down ourselves and realize that the social media has created many patriots who are actually not patriots, they are rogues. And they create a lot of bad blood between nations and countries on some pretext of the other, right? For a country like Maldives, right, it is very essential for us to be, kind of a neutral territory so that we can enjoy the benefits of people coming from every geography, right? Most of our commodities are imported into the country. So yes, anything happens globally affects us. It's not just the inflation in the country on account of the dollar, but please realize that any commodity increase anywhere in the world has a direct impact on the Maldives. Plus the fact that the cost of transportation increases on account of the geopolitical risk, that again has an impact on the Maldives. So we are, as a nation, extremely sensitive to any event that happens in any part of the world, especially South Asia, the Maldives. We are sitting right in the Indian Ocean, which is a huge chunk of ocean liners coming in and going out to that extent. So yes, we will always get affected by that. So neutrality is the best thing that could happen. And I do sincerely hope that we as a human race learn to coexist, be concerned about each other, and desist from unnecessary violence, which has begotten all of us some way or the other. And we've just forgotten the fact that we are all created by the same Almighty God. And we are brothers and sisters. We come from the same clan. We have the same genes in us, right? But somehow we have allowed geographical sentiments, nationalistic sentiments to sullen the relationship between countries. I hope it does improve in the coming days.
Yeah, to add to that, I mean, human beings are creatures of conflict. And of course, the conflicts that are going on, though there has not been a third world war, there has been more wars going on at any point in time. But Maldives depends on tourism. It has to be a friend to all. And I think demilitarization is something that they had looked at, this Indian thing. I take a completely different perspective. I don't think any foreign forces should be there in the Maldives. Last time it was a protectorate, as Sir Peter said. It's never been a colony. They've been very independent. And now 80% of the economy is dependent on travel and tourism. So there's no way that they could, cross anybody's path. Basically, like Switzerland, they have to be, in tourism, they have to be like what Switzerland was for financial. They took everybody's money. They did not need an army because nobody would form them because everybody had invested.
Yes.
Right?
And Dr. Anil, of course, what you said is so correct. I think there is potential in Maldives to be a very strong offshore banking center. It's not been explored. I think we are sitting at the crossroads of a time period in history where Maldives can actually become a very strong offshore center. That's Dubai on that side, that's Singapore, and Maldives right in the middle. Enough money to be made in offshore. And for offshore, neutrality is the core principle.
Yeah, better than Mauritius. I think Maldives is better situated. And for that to happen, they've got to be friends of India, Sri Lanka, all the other countries, Middle East, Europe, all that. So Maldives has to be a friend to all, extend their hand. And I think the policy of trying to demilitarize, to say that, okay, no foreign forces on our land is a good policy, but it had to be done in a proper way. Without any kind of hostility. I think the current president, I have confidence that we'll strike the correct chord, that, we are a friend to all, and we don't need any kind of, if you take up arms, always you're running the risk. You got Chinese helping, you got the Indians helping, you got, Europeans helping. So you don't need anybody having arms and having a station in the Maldives. So I completely agree. The last station was in Naddu by the British, but they peacefully left because they realized that Maldives need their independence and they don't need to interfere.
Distinguished members of the panel, we are out of time and I'm getting looks from my team. But before we go, I would like each of you to give a tip. Which sector do you think is a good bet for FDI for 2024 and 2025. Obviously, we've got the key tourism, but there are lots of cross-pollinating sectors that benefit from tourism. Maybe a rapid fire answer from everybody. Which industries do you think is a good bet for FDI in the next couple of years in the Maldives?
In my opinion, I would say it would be transport logistics, because we are very dependent on import. And additionally, with the projects underway, it would be more greener sources, green energy, green financing, or green supplies, because it is an initiative to move away from fossil fuels to greener, and it's part of our SDGs as well. So by 2030, we need to be into more efficient vehicles, vessels, or energy efficient processes need to be implemented. So that would be something that investors should look at.
Excellent.
Or we as financiers should look at.
Yes, thank you. Ahmed?
Yeah, I like that idea. Mufaddal also said that I mean the financing institution, or like a financial hub. Even that was one of the idea previously we used. Even Hormone, we think of those. I mean, like offshore financing. That I believe that the technological as well as the human capital, if we can bring that, there's something which is very, very important. Again, it will be helping for Maldives development, because we are in need of huge financing with this infrastructure or this development. So I believe that is the one area. Financial service sector is again another area where the FDI can do.
Thank you, Ahmed.
Yeah, I would say renewable
Sorry,
energy, as
Dr.
Shama
Priyanka.
said. Yeah, renewable energy, agriculture. It was mentioned earlier that food security is very important. Education, health, those are things because they can actually become do health tourism. Other countries, can come specialized. Singapore had done it. Mount Elizabeth is an example. They depend on people from outside coming. They don't have critical mass within. But luxury, sort of like treatment centers, specialized treatment centers, and also education, international university, where foreign universities can actually invest and have university islands. Like build like the Oxford, Cambridge. There could be university resort islands. So there are a lot of potential in the Maldives. Because the sea territory is so vast. What is 1 million square kilometers of sea territory? So. Okay, sky's the limit.
Anyone else? Before
Yes, I'd say that agriculture, yes, we need to get a lot of more islands developing the agricultural part of it. We could dredge more land, right, and start agriculture, cattle farming a little bit on that. Why not? If Netherlands could do, the Dutch have gone ahead and dredged most of their country. Right, there's a saying over there that God created the world and the Dutch created Netherlands. We could do that in the Maldives as well. I would also like to see, I did mention about offshore banking, a lot of investments out over there that will create a whole new generation of employment in the country and new revenues for the government at large. Energy, alternate energy is something that we need in the Maldives, right? We need to stop, we guzzle a lot of fuel, a lot of diesel. We need to look at alternate energy investments in the country to a large extent. And the other dream that I have is, let's make Maldives into a conference center, a global conference center. I'd like a Davos kind of a thing to be held in the Maldives. Right? Why not hold the Oscars in the Maldives once upon a time, right? We need to create more conference facilities where people can come to the Maldives, have their events, have large global conferences, large exhibitions, right? And get things done. People say logistics is a problem, but all of this can be managed.
Brilliant. MICE tourism, a good one to watch. We have a Dutchman here with us. William, any thoughts from you?
I agree with everybody has said, but I also think drainage, sanitization, water.
Yeah.
I think I've read about, that is a priority right now.
Right. So, Peter, any further thoughts on investment, where would you invest?
Well, I couldn't help thinking, after I'd said a bit about climate change and rising sea levels, that if the sea levels rise enough, the population of Sri Lanka can go back again to the top of Sigiriya. There's no Sigiriya in the Maldives, and a rise of a few feet of sea would have a major effect. So it is a significant worry. Obviously beyond the control of almost any government, but defences against rises of sea level seem to me will be of increasing importance.
There are floating villas that are being developed, and
Yes,
water
yes.
villas.
We will
There's
adapt
always
to live in the
solutions.
sea.
Exactly,
We'll become
they'll
sea
live in the sea.
creatures.
By the grace of God, we won't need to use the floating villas to go to Sigiriya, because we are planning a physical event in Male later this year, inshallah. Where, as you guys all said, we need some physical action. We can all shake hands at the end of it and have something in Male. Hopefully, fly Sir Peter and William over from London as well, and the Sri Lankan team, Dr. Priyanka and co. So we look forward to meeting you in person, hopefully very soon. In the meantime, thank you very much to everybody. Thank you to the listeners. God bless you and stay safe. Let's hope for peace in the world and a prosperous future, safety, security for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay blessed. Stay blessed.
And
You're-
support
Yes.
world peace.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Yes,
you.
for sure.
Thank you.
Thanks to the sponsors, thanks to the panelists,
Thank you
and
to-
thank you to the RIU for organizing this event, especially to Roshan, Meen, and all the other staff in the RIU in Colombo, and the audience, of course. So thanks, everyone. Bye-bye from London.
Thank you to Malin. Big thank
Bye-bye.
you
Just a
to
point, we
William.
never launched the country report. What happened to that?
We'll send that to you by email.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, gents. Thank you. Have a
Thank
great
you,
evening.
everybody.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.